and welcome to The Most Significant Bit, a podcast that explores the connections between engineering, technology, humanities, and the arts. I'm Derek Bush, and today we will be discussing how mangroves inspired living seawalls for shoreline sustainability. In this episode, we will discuss how mangroves inspired living seawalls for shoreline sustainability. Population expansion and development across the world is consuming much of Florida and other coastal states and countries have to offer. Naturally, with expansion comes contraction. With all of this expansion, the shorelines and the mangroves that do their job and protect the shorelines are being slowly depleted. Recently, my family and I went on vacation to Florida. Down in Florida, near the 10,000 Islands, we went on an ecology tour. So the eco tour was basically a boat ride where we were guided with two tour guides on this boat throughout the 10,000 islands. In the 10,000 islands, much like it says in its name, there are literally over 10,000 islands or bodies of land that are in and around this area of water off the coast. A lot of these islands contain mangroves, which are essentially trees that grow in the brine water, in the seawater, and they create a habitat for marine life. And they also basically create a protection against coastal winds, hurricanes, things of that nature. So on this trip, we went through and learned about these mangroves, which my family and I found very fascinating. We learned that, this is the only known plant that lives in salt water, essentially, and grows, has roots and foliage, just like other trees and things of that nature. But some of the leaves on there actually turn orange and yellow. They're like a sacrificial piece of foliage that consumes the salt as the plant takes the water up in through its root system. And it goes into this piece of foliage and it basically sheds itself off down into the water. So pretty fascinating. Little did we know that we'd come back, I'd start this class, and we'd have to learn about biomimicry. So like I kind of mentioned already, the benefits of mangroves are many. They create a habitat for marine wildlife. And another major thing they do is they protect themselves and whatever else is entailed within that island or landmass, if you will. There's actually one of the 10,000 islands that the tour guide explained to us that there are homes where they took and removed some of these mangroves and then built homes in this area, and crazy enough, these homes are actually more protected than those on the coast because these mangroves have these really strong intertwined roots that run all the way down into the sea, obviously, and just basically form this barrier that protects those homes far better than just a concrete wall along the coast does. So that was pretty fascinating. Also, 1/3 of mangroves have been lost in the United States. And as I already mentioned, they create marine life and habitats and, keep those animals, fish and what have you, keep them safe, gives them a place to hide, breed, and also eat. So that's another major benefit of these mangroves. And I also mentioned, we learned in the tour, these trees, this foliage, it acts as a source of filtration. So there's a filtration capacity that is also involved with this plant life. And that is also being lost. So like I mentioned, 1/3 of the mangroves just in the U.S., this doesn't count Australia and other coastal areas that have mangroves, has been lost due to expansion and things of that nature as we inhabit more areas along the coast. So as far as these go, since we're losing them, there's companies out there that have learned and understood these plants, so they have, to the best of their abilities, recreated some of these mangroves. Some of these are alternatives, are just, like I said, concrete walls, which is just basically a divider, a barrier between the water and the land. And, that's your basic setup. But beyond that, like I mentioned, some of these companies have built walls that replicate these mangroves. They are essentially concrete material and other things, such as oyster shells, things of that nature, that are 3D printed or casted into these walls that have the same intertwining vines or shoots as the mangroves. So pretty cool alternative. One of the companies is called Reef Wall, and it's one of the eco alternatives to your standard concrete barrier wall. This is from a professor out of Kansas. He worked with some folks down in Florida and designed these. Some of these are actually 3D printed, and like I said, they can't totally replicate the mangrove roots, but they are very, very similar. There are also other companies that have done something much like this, but on a larger scale. And they have their walls installed all over the place, in New York, Australia, all over the world. And like I mentioned earlier, as far as marine life habitat goes, oysters and crustaceans and all these kind of things have the opportunity to grow, live, recreate, all those things on these eco-friendly versions of these barrier walls. So also, I mentioned that these provide basically a tidal break. If you take a standard flat barrier wall and hit it with water, that water is going to both splash and push up and down, whereas these alternatives do a better job of cushioning and, breaking up the tidal waves and the push into these walls. The eco-friendly mangroves make for a great alternative rather than the standard concepts, and this is a great example of biomimicry. Today, we covered how mangroves inspired humans to create an eco-friendly alternative to standard coastal barrier walls. We learned about my vacation story and learning about the mangroves and how this all got started. The benefits of the mangroves, like the marine habitat for the wildlife, recreation, food, and things of that nature. The loss of 1/3 of mangroves just in the United States. The capacity for these mangroves to actually filter out water. And then these standard alternatives, such as a flat concrete wall. And then also the concept of the reef wall, this eco alternative that uses recycled materials along with concrete, like I mentioned, oyster shells, to create an alternative that has some of the same benefits of a standard mangrove. The opportunity to utilize man-made seawalls that have far greater benefits than just blocking water. By mimicking Mother Nature's engineering, we can achieve great accomplishments in the world. Thanks for listening.